Fans of the Horus Heresy, thank you very much for joining me for a book review of the Horus Heresy Book 4, Conquest. So, released in 2014, this is a fourth instalment from Forgewald in the now becoming epic rules series and background series documenting the history, events and times of the Horus Heresy Galactic Civil War for the Warhammer 40,000 supplement game. This is a detailed book review. I'm going to go cover to cover and I'm going to take you through the various sections of this substantial leather-bound high quality book. I'm going to pick out some key details for you guys and then I'll give you an assessment and opinion at the end of the review on what I think of the book. So let's begin. So as I say, this is got the same high quality leather binding as the previous books. We have a very dramatic opening scene there showing a force of Mechanicum ground troops and indentured knights moving forward. And we have an opener here with a picture of a Cerastus Knight Lancer in a battlescape. And it says, "The age of darkness is upon us. We shall not live to see its end." And that is very much an indicator of the central theme of this book. So here we have it, the Horus Heresy Book 4, Conquest, a supplement for Warhammer 40,000. So interesting change here. This is the first of the Horus Heresy books which hasn't credited Alan Bligh as the principal writer. So I guess is an indication there that more and more people must have been contributing to this project as it grew. Interestingly, this edition, this particular book I bought was actually a limited edition release, which came in a large card sleeve with a set of laminated play sheets and also a large art poster as well of the cover art. So what I'll do at the end of the review, I'm going to tack on an extra section where I do a little product review showing that, because I think it's one of the few times I've actually done this limited edition thing. So I thought I'll just show it to you guys as a bit of an interest. And I know there's been some, one of you guys in the comments had asked if there are any art prints available from these books. So I've got one to show you. Right, let's move anyway, back to the book. So we've got the usual contents page. So what does Book 4 Conquest contain? So it follows the established pattern of history, followed by unit backgrounds, followed by special rules, army lists. This is the first Horus Heresy book which has no Space Marine Legion units in it. So it only has one Mechanicum character as well. So a bit of a radical change there. Here we have a Horus Heresy book which has no army list to do with Space Marines or virtually any Mechanicum. And the reason for that is this book focuses on the Solar Auxilia, which was a brand new force that was introduced with this book into the Horus Heresy, but also 30k overall. Then we also get the Questoris Knight Crusade army list. But yeah, so we have history, unit background. Again, no Legion information. What we do have though is the Solar Auxilia, several Mechanicum, several Knight houses. So Knight Maccabeus, Veroni, Orthanc, Ethogen, and then we have the Titan Legion, Legio Tempestus. And then there's a general section as well covering Traitor legions and their allies, and the loyalist legions as well. Then we have this a very large section on campaign rules for the Age of Darkness. So this is expanding the background rules outside of more scenario-driven campaigns which have been provided in the previous books, i.e. The Isfahan 3 Atrocity, Isfahan 5 Drop Site Massacre, etc. And now these become into much wider, broader themes which are non-generic, so you can apply them to any any sort of situation you can dream up to play. And here we have a depiction of Mortarion leading his Death Guard, and that is from a battle that we will come to in the history section. Once again, the history is introduced by our anonymous or our semi-anonymous author AK, so the Imperial historian who at the end of his life is looking back over the events of the Horus Heresy and the Great Crusade that he lived through and writing his historical account to remember those times, as perhaps one of the a rare historian who has a perspective to do so, a rare personal perspective to do so. So the first section of the history is the Hour of the War Master, and what this picks up on is sort of the widening conflict of the Horus Heresy. So moving beyond Istvan and then the battles of Paramar V and Fal, which followed it shortly afterwards, the conflict now truly begins to spread across the Imperium, and we begin to see the evidence of Horus's groundwork, laying the path for his treachery and his rebellion by various means of subterfuge and espionage in the years before the heresy. And this talks about how there is a perverse reversal of the Great Crusade at the start of a heresy. So where Horus had once been the great liberator and unifier of the Imperium, the role was now reversed, and he became a savage reconqueror. And every systems he came to were given the stark choice whether to capitulate and throw their lot in with his rebellion or face destruction. And indeed, some systems were probably just destroyed, or very nearly destroyed, out of hand, to make an example of them, to spread the terror and accelerate the ease with which other systems could be subjugated to his cause. And here we have a sketch of the War Master himself. Interestingly, it talks about the wider strategic situation here, and it actually mentions the Battle of Prospero and how that has already happened, and how the fragments of the Thousand Sons are trying to join his cause, which I thought was an interesting note. It talks about the coming of the Age of Darkness. So the Age of Darkness is a historical period in the term in the Imperium to describe the Horus Heresy and the period following the Isfahan battles and when Horus reconquered or subjugated large numbers of planets that he'd previously taken in the Imperium to fuel his rebellion. Here it talks about the Dark Compliance, and this is, as I said, how worlds were terrorized and destroyed to force compliance of other worlds into joining Horus. And then these pages here, or these couple of pages, talk about the gearing up of the war machines of the Imperium and Horus's rebels. And reading this is an interesting historical comparison that drew in my mind. And it talks about how there were the initial forces involved in the Isfahan battles particularly sustained very high losses. And losses that had to be replaced. So alternate means of replacement had to be sought outside of the traditional approaches that had been undertaken. So with the careful process of Astartes creation and the gradual building of the Imperial army fleets. Here it talks about how Horus's forces embrace the more unconventional and dangerous methods of accelerated Astartes creation, as already were beginning to be practiced by the World Eaters before the heresy broke out, and how enormous army forces were raised through the forces of through the terror of dark compliance. So, and it sounded a bit like the historical narrative of World War One. So the initial battles of World War One inflicted very heavy casualties on the armies of the time, and particularly if you were to compare it to the British Expeditionary Force in 1914. While they were very effective in the battles they fought, the casualties they sustained were unsustainable, and you couldn't replace that professional army with like-for-like quality troops. So conscription and other approaches were brought in to gear up the war machine and the material, and this seems to be played out. The writers have used that as a narrative background here. It talks about the first substantial battles that picked non-marine forces against the Traitor Legion. So on the system of Manachea, Solar Auxilia forces were pitted against Traitor Astartes, which is interesting. A new terrifying reality to loyal human troops to the Imperium. And it also, for the first time, talks about the Sundered and the Black, and this is the genesis of the idea of the Shattered Legions and the Black Shields. The Shattered Legions are the fragmented elements of legions that have kind of come outside of their central control, so be it the death of their Primarch in the case of the Iron Hands, or elements that are out on missions and chose different allegiances to their Primarch. And then of course the Black Shields, which were Astartes who renounced their former chapter loyalties, abandoned their heraldry and became forces unto themselves. And there's good ideas there to introduce into your games. However, this is really brought forth and developed properly in Book VI, Retribution, where we actually see a very thorough expansion of the concept. So, the Conquest of the Coronid Deeps. So now we move into a series of historical, the Coronid Deeps is a sector that was attacked early on in the heresy by various elements of the traitors. And various traitors were involved in these conquests. And it talks about how, in this first section, the scourging of the Cyclops cluster, the first thing the defenders knew was when a death ship called the Malin Dawn arrived with a slaughtered crew. And that was the first portent of what was to come. It also talks about how Mechanicum, it talks about the internal civil war within the Mechanicum as well here. And in this section here, which is called the Emissary of Mars, we have a mention of the emissary of Kelbal Hal, called Regulus. Kelbal Hal is the fabricator general of Mars, so the de facto leader of the Mechanicum, who declared for Horus. And at the time of this book, the Great Martian Civil War has already occurred with its terrible destruction. But here it talks about how his emissary, Regulus, was operating in this sector to try persuade various Forge Worlds to declare for Horus's cause. For example, it mentions about visiting Mepandex to try sway them. And then a second place that he goes to is Mazoa, and in Mazoa he's received with great hostility and flees for his life, which then leads to outright war. There is a mysterious description of what happened to House Orthlak. They basically seem to have disappeared off the map. This next section, the Reaper of Worlds, this chronicles the Death Guard's early post-Istvan 5 operations. And here we have the Primarch Mortarion. And Mortarion leads an attack onto the planet of Dominica Minor to crush the Imperial resistance and take it. And he does so with his potent legion and the support of a night house as well. Yeah, there's a good amount of plot development and discussion and detail around these military actions. And then we move on to the Manichaean War. This is another element of this early Traitor expansion. And on Manachea, what had happened is there's a very powerful defending set army, and these had all been dispersed by Horus on basically chasing false leads and phantom Xenos incursions. But as the heresy becomes evident, the commanders desperately scrabble to reassemble their forces, and in this conflict we hear about the jealousy of the Black Magos, one of which I believe is Archmagos Dracovac, who's a character who's going to come later. We have the Battle of Portmore, and then and then it talks about war, and inevitably Horus is victorious here as well. This is interesting. This is called the Path of the Damned, and it talks about how the defenders were partially surprised by how Horus managed to maneuver his fleet in the warp to actually attack the planet. And basically, to do so, his forces passed through a treacherous area of the warp that had previously been unpassable. So here it discusses, well, how did they actually do that? And it alludes to the fact that the creatures of the warp assisted Horus in doing so. And the battle is discussed in great detail. Then the next section is a darkness descending. Here you have Archmagos Dracovac here, the warlord of Cyclorath. The discussion of the poison ships. And various other details about this element of the battle. So there's a lot of new threads and themes that are picked up and that are set off and created and explored in these sections, and it all expands, I suppose, the scope and the background of the Horus Heresy up to this point. I suppose one thing with this though is it lacks one thing I did think with this section of lore is it did lack the direction of the earlier books, which had a much stronger narrative theme, whereas this is more of it's much more diverse. So a lot of ground is covered, but perhaps not in the depth or maybe attention-grabbing interest of some of the earlier books. And then we have a section which talks about the principal worlds of the Coronid Deeps. So the series of campaigns and battles we've talked about previously are discussed here. Our first picture of a trooper of the Solar Auxilia. Several planets are discussed in detail here. And then we come to the background section on the Solar Auxilia themselves. So this is the Solar Auxilia. I'll talk a bit about these guys. The Solar Auxilia is in effect a new version of the Imperial Guard that was created for the Horus Heresy, and basically these guys, the Solar Auxilia, are the best of the Imperial Army, and they're more than just the best of the Imperial Army. They are void trained and equipped human troops, so they're equipped and trained to fight in space and on the ground, and they are sort of like the second tier of Imperial military to the Astartes legions, and they're far more numerous. So there's probably an order of magnitude more Solar Auxilia than the legion. So there's an awful lot of them. And they very much play, it talks a bit about here in terms of their style of warfare and what they do, and it says if a legion conquers a sector, then the Solar Auxilia will come and police it. So each planet will have a militia force, but the auxilia will be able to move between planets in the sector and systems in the sector and deal with any localized rebellions and take that sort of role. Then if there's more serious resistance, then the Astartes will be called in. And the Solar Auxilia trace their roots back to the Saturine tech guilds of the ancient Terra system, or the Terra system, and it is that spacefaring history or heritage that the entire Imperial formation grew out of. This is an interesting section here, and this deals with the Exertus Imperialis. Now, the Exertus Imperialis is, in effect, the human or the imperial administrative structure and organisation that sits behind the Great Crusade and basically allows it to function. And it's made up of all sorts of stuff. So you've got the Imperial Armada, the Tithe Corps, the Iterators and the Rembrandts, of course, and they all make up this enormous body, and they are subservient to the Titan legions, the Mechanicum, and of course the Adeptus Astartes. And it finishes by noting that this is an imperial organisation that ceased to exist after the heresy, because it was destroyed in the fires of the heresy. But after that, imperial expansion stopped and was reduced to a trickle of, if anything, and so its purpose had gone as well. And then we get discussion around military doctrine, training styles, weaponry, equipment, and assets of the Solar Auxilia. Then we have a force organisation chart, and this mimics the chart shown in Book 1 for the Marine Legion and Book 3 for the Tagmata Omnissiah of the Mechanicum. And it's a fairly brief introduction, but it does set the scene for the Solar Auxilia. The Solar Auxilia really, I really like them. I've got a force, but this book was a bit of an experiment introducing standard human troops into the heresy games, which I really like, and it kind of helps fit with the theme that heresy became such a huge conflict. Then we have some of the usual high quality artistic renditions of Solar Auxilia warriors and their war machines in a variety of different paint schemes, and then we have a section on heraldry. Okay, now we move into a section on Knight Titan. So we have a series of overviews of houses or types of houses. So the first are oath-bound vassal housebounds of Mechanicum. So these are knight legions who are, de facto elements of the Mechanicum and work directly with them, and of course commonly field a number of esoteric, high-tech knight patterns, such as the Megaera we have here, and the Styrics, and not in this book, but coming later is the Cerastus Atropos, which are all of a similar style. Then we have House Maccabeus, a knight household who declared traitor and helped and supported the Death Guard in their attack of Dominus Minor. Lots of great pictures of paint schemes using the Imperial Knight Titan designs that run throughout this. House Veroni, nice allegiance rating of Fidelitas Tenax, so tenuously loyal. Yeah, if you've got any problems with Thanatars, well, just get a Cerastus Lancer on them. That'll sort it out. And House Orthlak. And all these, you get a description of the actual of the history, the force style, or the style of fighting, should I say, and then their assets and the type of knights they have and the number of knights they have as well. So, and this obviously this fits very well with the army list for the Knight Titans that comes later in the book. Then it has Ethergen or Ethragen, another traitor household, in a suitably dark and ominous paint scheme. That's a great picture there. I love that one. And then we have Legio Tempestus, a Titan Legion of uncertain loyalty, probably part loyal and part traitorous. Of course, the Legio Tempestus in the original Adeptus Titanicus game was known as the Storm Lords or Thunder Reapers. They got this nice, almost sort of pastel blue and white and silver paint scheme, which is looks really good. Then this section is a general overview of the traitor legions and their allied forces. So, as well as a discussion around the traitor legions themselves, Auxilia, fleets, the Dark Mechanicum, and other forces. So, you might say that includes the Alpha Legion, but you know all the sorts of agents, saboteurs, agents provocateurs, etc., who help the cause of Horus's betrayal and rebellion. And then we have a set of images of forces, and these kind of give some pictures of the traitors, but you can see that their appearance and iconography is beginning to change as chaos, the effects of their chaotic betrayal and allegiance begins to work its course. That's a Falchion super heavy tank destroyer. Very impressive vehicle that one is. Zaruthatrax, impressive name too. And here we have some new Death Guard depictions as well. So this section, you know, it brings on the imagery to reflect the changes in the story as well. And then we have a similar thing for the Loyalist legions, and it talks about what happened to, you know, obviously the legions who were caught up in the events of Isstvan V, and the legions who weren't as well. So and we get a mention of the Blood Angels for the first time in any sort of detail, and also the Space Wolves and the White Scars. This here talks about how warp storms began to become increasingly common again at the time of the Horus Heresy, and we all know why that is. This is because of the influence of Chaos, and Chaos was doing that to help Horus's forces, who have a very gritty and grizzled looking Iron Hands legionary. Might almost be pictures like this give you ideas as to how you might start to create the transition into a Shattered Legion imagery, or indeed even Black Shields. Imperial Fist, Iron Hands Contemptor, some Salamanders, and this guy here, yeah, Ancient Gren. He was in effect, he was kind of like the most senior and almost like the leader of the resistance on Dominica Minor, and in the story he was he tried to defeat Mortarion in close combat, but was felled by him eventually. So that concludes the history section. So yeah, huge history section there. It's very, as I say, it's much more scattered and diverse than what we've previously seen. Right, then I'm going to move quickly through this. This is a huge chunk of the rules with about 70-80 pages here, called Battles in the Age of Darkness, Conquest Campaign System. So if you want, this is a full and comprehensively developed campaign system to allow you to do just that, fight a long-running, in-depth campaign as part of as a Horus Heresy series of games. And you've got a number of missions given here, so styles. You've got strategic raid missions here. And dotted in amongst this to break it up a bit, because this is a long section. We do get a few artistic depictions of various troops, which is a nice way of breaking up the rules bit. Then we have a city fight. So we've got strategic raids now. Have battles in a city, a detailed set of rules for fighting urban conflict. I mean, there's enough material on here to occupy a dedicated gamer for months and months, or dedicated group of gamers for months and months, if not longer. The quantity of ideas and rules for different games is enormous here. It's huge, so you could really lose yourself in this. And I guess from that point of view, it makes this book a good value purchase. A Talax of the Death Guard. Table of mysterious wreckage. I like that. And then this section here adds some special rules and some additional supporting rules to complement the campaign system as well. And here we have our first depiction of a Black Shield in this series of books, armed with a graviton gun. And his armour is a real hodgepodge of markings and symbolisms as well, so we don't know who or where he's originally from. And as I say, this is the Black Shield concept is going to be more fully developed in Book VI, where they get their own army list and a lot of information around it. You get a detailed set of rules for doing character development, so you can actually play heroes through a series of games and improve them as you go along. This section is a little bit controversial at times, the relics of the Dark Age of technology. So a variety of pieces of equipment here, some of which are generally available, some of which are Legion specific, which basically are pieces of war gear turned up to 11. There are some things in here that are a little bit broken, shall we say, but they're designed for use in the campaigns, and they're designed for use by agree. It has to be through mutual agreement of the players, and also both players should ideally have their own relic to balance each other. But there is a whole fascinating set of gear here and some wonderful ideas. Just be careful with them in game balance. Then it actually gives you some examples of Conquest campaigns here to give you an idea how to throw through those. Right, and then we move on to the Solar Auxilia Crusade army list. So, a brand new force introduced into 30k and 40k. This is a rare thing, and maybe the only time Forge World has introduced a completely new force. Well, along with the Mechanicum, this is the only time. Normally we see new forces through the channel of Games Workshop, but yes, this is completely unique to the Heresy, and there isn't anything truly comparable to the Solar Auxilia in the 40k game. I mean, you could argue what used to be the Imperial Stormtroopers, or the Scions, I believe they're called these days. It has some parallels, but still the Solar Auxilia are a step above that, I think. So it's a fully developed army list. You get a whole host of special rules, war gear, warlord traits, and I'm not going to go through this in detail. I have done a separate video where I give a detailed review of the Solar Auxilia tactics and army list makeup, and I'll leave a link in the description for that. Yeah, I mean the Solar Auxilia I like that paint scheme. That's for a force called the Ash Scorpions. That's on my potential list of paint jobs for my Solar Auxilia force. But yeah, I mean, Solar Auxilia, you've got a variety. You've got a selection of basic infantry types, but then you've got an enormous choice of armoured units you can take as well. can see the tanks and the Lords of War section is huge. There's a unique Lord of War, the Stormhammer super heavy assault tank, if I can say it. A veritable fortress on wheels. And then we get the Questoris Knight Crusade army list. So if the Solar Auxilia can have their own army list, and the legions can, and the Mechanicum can, well, so can the knights. Unsurprisingly, this is a lot shorter because you don't have many things that can go in this army on account of the fact that your cheapest models cost nearly 400 points. But you do get all the same sort of things. You get like you can customise your knights, give them sort of specific abilities and skill levels, if you will, and then you get a variety of warlord traits and usual D6 table, including the interesting. I love the name of this one, Puissant Commander. And here is the only Mechanicum person in the entire list, in the entire book, Archmagos Dracovac, and Dracovac has a number of has some rules that ally him well to being the warlord of a knight force. And you get all the knights which are available up to the time. I think that includes everything bar the Knight Atropos. And also I think the carapace weapons for the standard knights. There you have it. Book 4. Did I just say? Yes, we get our afterword there as well. And once again, it's thanking all the fans for buying the books and saying, get ready for what's going to come next. So, what do I think of Book 4, Conquest? Interesting one, this. And this book's, you could certainly say it is a brave experiment in the Horus Heresy line to move the focus away from the Marine Legions. And I think it's that particular approach that you will have to judge whether or not this is something for you. There's a large and diverse section of history in there. However, it lacks the narrative pace and excitement of the previous 3 books, I would say, and it's interesting in the context of having read the previous 3 books. So the history in this one, I'm a bit more on the sort of, well, you can take it or leave it front, compared to the other 3 books where I found the history and the background, the history really interesting. There's lots. I suppose if you're a knight player, there's loads of knights described in this book, and you also get the army lists for the knights and the Solar Auxilia as well. The rules in terms of how up to date the army list rules are here, I think they're essentially unchanged compared to the later books. There are some amendments, I believe, in the Auxilia, Militia and Knight Army book, the red book that followed later. But I think essentially the points are pretty much unchanged. I know there's a few adjustments maybe to army options, but you don't see the major rebalancing of points that you got with the Mechanicum and the Legion. So from a army list point of view, this book holds up better than the previous 3 did. So it's worthy of consideration from that point of view. You do get the background to Solar Auxilia. There's not a lot of background to it, but it is there nonetheless. I think you'd need to be like me and really interested in the Auxilia to think, I'll buy this book for the background on the Auxilia. And then you've got the large and very well developed campaign system. So if playing campaigns is your thing, and particularly narrative campaigns where you can advance a character through stages, have their stats improved, do things like hunt for relics, then that's a good draw of this book, because you've got that big section there which deals with campaigns in a great deal of depth. So that, if that is something you enjoy, this book certainly presents you with a great way to game that. Yeah, so a bit of I think I've got more mixed feelings around Book 4 compared to the previous books. So yeah, I think if you want to buy it, it's got to be for kind of like one of those specialised reasons. The history, so-so. Solar Auxilia list, yeah, worthy of consideration. Knight list, worthy of consideration. Background on the knights, again, you know, that's a large section. Conquest campaign system, yeah, that's a big thing if that's what you want. So yeah, so that is book 4, Conquest, the first Horus Heresy book with no Space Marine army listing at all. So a bit of a change there. Anyway, let me know what you think. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this review. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye. Okay then, so I said that I was going to do a little review of the limited edition box set that you get with book 4. So I've put it in it to show you what it is. So it comes in this large card sleeve, and on the spine it says Conquest and the Horus Heresy. So yeah, it's big, heavy. Well, you know, it's well made, good quality sleeve. It has the Eye of Horus on one side and the Imperial Eagle on the other. And if we just slide the book out, so we've got the actual book 4 itself, the sleeve, and then we get some additional content as well, which I'm going to try to get all of it out. There we go. So pop that over there. So put the book to one side because we've just done a review of that. So the extras you get in here are a series of play sheets for use in Battles of the Age of Darkness. And you get a Mechanicum sheet. So these are double-sided, and you've got a mixture of weapons, special rules for those weapons, and other war gear. So I guess they're a pretty handy resource, and I think they've stood the test of time pretty well on the rules front in terms of how up to date they are. There's no points values, so these are our preference reference sheets for gameplay. Then you get the same for the Solar Auxilia, and these are finished in they're fairly thin card, but they've got a shiny finish to them to protect them from use. So you get the Solar Auxilia, you get the Space Marine Legions. They got lots of gear, unsurprisingly. And then you also get a table of Warlord traits as well. And you got Legion, Mechanicum, Solar Auxilia, and Questoris Knights. And then a selection of special rules, such as, you know, Graviton, Pulse, Heat Seeker, Radphage for the special weapons and the like in the game. Obviously when they designed this, they forgot the spaces in the title, whoops. And then the second thing you get is you get this large art print of the cover picture of the Knight Castigator. So I will just take this off shot to try fold it out. And there you have it. It's a really large picture. Yeah, as you can see, that's more than filled the camera shot. So I'll just, and it's the cover from book 4 Conquest, but it's a whole picture, and it's been turned into I mean, this is probably I don't know, A2 size or something. One of a few times that we've actually got an art print as part of the from one of the Horus Heresy pictures in one of the books. Now in the reverse you get a whole set of pictures of Knight Questoris houses from the Coronid Wars. So you get that as well. So yeah, I mean, that was a limited edition, so you can't buy it anymore, and I think they only did 1,000 copies at the time. It was I think it was 1,000 as opposed to 500. I think it must have been something that they didn't feel sold that well, because we didn't see a repeat of this sort of style of setup again. I don't remember seeing this for book 5, so I think they must have abandoned it. And also, I mean, I bought it just to try it out at the time. I think it was about an extra It was quite a bit more, it was about an extra 18 quid, but I guess the thing is, if you've got these stacked on the bookshelf, then if you buy one of these, then it kind of is doesn't fit and match the rest of them quite right. So yeah, I'll just stick with the main book. Anyway, I hope you found that bonus little review interesting. Cheers then, bye bye.